All right, so you've got this great idea, maybe for a SaaS product or, even a smaller micro SaaS tool. That initial excitement is great, but then you hit this wall, and it's usually not about the core feature or even sales initially. It's the messy stuff, right? Infrastructure, security, compliance, getting paid. How do you actually get from just a concept to a real product that's ready for users globally even and won't just like fall over?
Yeah, that's the classic founder's headache, isn't it? You see all this advice online, just launch fast, iterate, but, well, that often means you rack up a ton of technical debt. And you end up paying that back later, often with massive interest in terms of time and rewrites. Launch strategy outline from a company called SG2 Technologies, and it kind of sidesteps that whole debate. They jump right into the operational bits, the non-negotiable things you need for a modern scalable launch.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're pulling apart the 5 core pillars SG2 really emphasizes. We want to figure out, what does a well-informed entrepreneur or maybe a team getting ready for that Series A round, what do they really need to get right to launch successfully and securely? We're basically looking for that roadmap that helps you sustain growth after you find product market fit.
And the big goal, the thing that ties all these seemingly separate pieces together, is making sure you build it right from the very start. Their objective is pretty straightforward, but honestly quite powerful.
Yeah.
Make the SaaS product safer, faster, and growth ready. Really, if you're building any kind of multi-user application today, focusing on those 3 things, safer, faster, growth ready, that's probably the best way to avoid painful rebuilds later.
Okay, so let's jump straight into that foundation then. Well, almost existential threats, it skips right past the idea part and insists the very first technical decision has to be about security. So what does secure architecture actually mean here? Is it just like using HTTPS and calling it a day?
No, not quite. That's the key thing. Secure architecture isn't just a checklist item. It's about making foundational choices that inherently limit risk. Things like environment segregation. Making absolutely sure your staging or testing environment is totally separate from your live production data. That's critical. And managing secrets API keys, passwords right from the beginning, never hard coding them. And crucially, this principle of least privilege. Users, services, they only get the exact access they need, no more. If you don't think about this stuff early, you're basically just building vulnerabilities right into the core of your application.
Okay. And what's interesting is, even within that big topic of secure architecture, they pull out one specific component, IAM, identity and access management. Now, for someone just launching maybe an MVP, wouldn't using something simple like Google Sign-In or GitHub Auth be enough? Does focusing on full IAM feel a bit like overkill at the start?
That's exactly the trap. Basic login, like using social providers, that just confirms who someone is. Authentication. IAM, though, that's about authorization. It's about what you're allowed to do once you're logged in. And for any SaaS, especially multi-tenant, where different customers use the same platform, even a small micro SaaS, you absolutely need strong user segregation. Think about it. If customer A can somehow even accidentally see or worse, modify customer B's data, that's a massive IAM failure.
Right. So it's not just about letting people log in. It's about carefully dividing up data and features based on who they are, what company they belong to, their role.
Precisely. And the complexity ramps up fast. You might need admin roles, standard user roles, maybe someone who only handles billing, perhaps different levels for just viewing data versus actually changing it. And all of that needs to be kept totally separate across maybe hundreds or thousands of different customer organizations or tenants, trying to bolt a sophisticated permission model onto a basic login system later. That's where technical debt doesn't just grow, it kind of explodes. It really limits your ability to land bigger enterprise clients too, because they'll demand things like single sign-on, SSO, or detailed audit trails. So yeah, robust IAM is absolutely key to that building safer goal.
Got it. It's the security bedrock, defining not just identity, but the precise boundaries of what each user or organization can touch. Okay, so once you have that secure base, the strong architecture, and the IAM sorted, you need to actually turn this thing into a business, right? Not just code. And that means tackling a whole different set of integrations.
Exactly. The business and legal essentials. SG2 Technologies points out 2 really crucial things you need for market readiness. These bridge the gap between your secure code and actually being a viable platform people can use and pay for.
First one, no surprise here, is how you get paid. Reliable payment integration. And this sounds like more than just putting a buy now button on a page. What level of complexity are we talking about for a SaaS aiming for growth?
Yeah, definitely more complex. We're talking about a proper subscription management system. This needs to handle things like different recurring billing cycles, monthly, annual, maybe usage-based. It needs to manage what happens when payments fail, which they inevitably do, handling those webhooks,
Mhm.
securely dealing with customer payment details, ideally using a system where you don't even touch the raw card numbers yourself to stay compliant with PCI standards, and smoothly handling upgrades, downgrades, prorated charges, all that stuff. If you find yourself manually fixing subscription issues or changing plans for users, your operational costs are just going to balloon as you grow. Nailing this integration helps you launch faster because you avoid that immediate financial friction with users.
Right. It's the plumbing for actually making money.
Okay.
Makes sense. But mentioned right alongside payments, and this one feels potentially even more crucial for staying alive long term, is compliance. Now, compliance. For a founder juggling a million things, that can just feel like some abstract legal task you do later.
And that perception is precisely the danger. Compliance isn't just a legal form you fill out. It's actually an architectural decision. If you plan to handle any kind of sensitive customer data, especially if you want to sell to other businesses or larger enterprises, you have to think about standards like SOC2.
Okay, SOC2. Why is that one such a big deal in the SaaS world?
SOC2 is basically the benchmark audit. It proves you have secure systems and processes, and not just technically, but how your organization operates around security. And getting SOC2 certified relies heavily on having two things built in from the very beginning.
Mm.
Really good audit logging and a clear plan for data residency.
Okay, walk me through the practical side of that. How does planning the architecture affect compliance down the line?
Well, take data residency. If you have customers in Europe, you need to comply with GDPR. California CCPA. Other regions have their own rules. This often means you need to know and sometimes control where that specific customer's data physically lives, on servers in the EU or the US or wherever. If your initial architecture wasn't designed with that in mind, maybe your database is just one big global instance trying to retrofit that, trying to split data geographically later. It's incredibly difficult and expensive. A real nightmare. Same with audit logging for SOC2. You need a record of who did what when. If that logging isn't built into your IAM, your application logic from the start, proving compliance later is exponentially harder. This is exactly why compliance is positioned as a core strategy for being growth ready. You build it in so it doesn't block you later.
Wow, okay. That completely changes how you think about compliance. It's not just a legal review, it's a fundamental engineering design choice. You can't really launch fast if 6 months down the line you have to halt everything to rebuild your database just to meet a compliance requirement you suddenly need.
Exactly right. You're minimizing that future regulatory friction that could otherwise stop your scaling dead in its tracks.
Okay, so this leads us to maybe the most modern sounding detail they list. The one that really signals this strategy is current. After covering the essentials, security, payments, compliance, they mention a very specific kind of high-end feature, Gen AI-powered search.
Yeah, that one's interesting, isn't it? And notice the specific application of Gen AI they chose. They didn't just say, add some AI. They're specifically pointing to using it to solve a really common user pain point, finding information within a complex application.
Mm.
Gen AI search, using things like vector embeddings and natural language processing, goes way beyond simple keyword matching. It tries to understand the user's intent.
Hmm. But how does that connect to the goal of scaling smarter? It sounds cool, definitely, but maybe like a premium add-on, not a foundational piece?
Well, it connects directly to both operational efficiency and customer retention, which are key to smart scaling. Imagine your SaaS application grows. You go from having a few dozen help articles to maybe thousands of documents, plus user-generated content, complex feature descriptions. Traditional keyword search starts to fail pretty badly in that scenario. Users can't find what they need, they get frustrated, they end up filing support tickets asking basic questions. Gen AI search can dramatically reduce that friction. It makes a complex, feature-rich product feel easier and more intuitive to navigate. So that improves customer satisfaction, keeps them happy, and critically, it cuts down the workload on your customer support team. Less support burden means you can scale more profitably. That's scaling smarter.
Ah, okay. So it's like a proactive way to manage the complexity that comes with growth. Makes the system easier to use and saves the business operational cost. All right, so looking at this whole package then, the secure architecture, the robust IAM, the integrated payments, planning for compliance, adding advanced search from this, the source material seems to be aiming at a pretty broad audience. It mentions a founder, a startup, or a scaling enterprise.
Yeah, and I think this comprehensive approach really helps de-risk growth at each of those stages. For, say, a founder just launching a micro SaaS, this strategy means they're hopefully not building something that requires a massive, painful rewrite the moment it gets traction, they start with the kind of security and compliance thinking that you usually only see in much larger, more established companies.
And what about for the scaling enterprise, maybe one that already has a product out there?
For them, it's more about assurance, right? Assurance that their underlying infrastructure can actually handle global expansion. Can it support complex new features, like that Gen AI search, without falling over or becoming inefficient? This strategy validates that the architecture is robust enough for major additions and ensures the foundational structure can handle the complex regulatory landscape that comes with selling globally. It's about capacity, resilience, maintainability, making sure the platform can support growth across that whole maturity curve.
Okay, so pulling all these pieces back together, what we have is a defined process, laying out the necessary components. It covers, like you said, everything from secure architecture and IAM through to payment integration, compliance, and even Gen AI-powered search.
Exactly. And if we map this back to that motto SG2 uses, every single one of these technical and business choices directly supports one of those three goals. Build safer. That's clearly the foundational secure architecture and the robust IAM, security first, always.
Right, and launch faster.
That comes from having the reliable payment systems ready to go and having the basic compliance frameworks like thinking about SOC2 needs early already considered. You remove those financial and regulatory hurdles that so often slow down getting to market.
Okay, and finally, scale smarter.
That's where things like the Gen AI search come in, optimizing the user experience and reducing internal operational load. And it's also about ensuring that the compliance structure you built is ready for rapid, potentially international growth without causing legal headaches later. The whole process, end to end, seems designed to strategically move an application from idea to SaaS in a way that is actually prepared for real, sustained growth.
This has been a really insightful deep dive, actually, into what goes into a modern SaaS launch strategy structurally. We've gone through the core bits needed for a product that's built to last, starting with secure architecture, really locking down identity and access management for multiple tenants, integrating payments in a scalable way, building in compliance from an architectural standpoint, and even adding those smart differentiators like advanced AI search to boost efficiency. These five elements together seem to define a product that's actually designed for growth, not just, initial survival.
This specific roadmap and strategic thinking we've been analyzing comes from SG2 Technologies.